Welcome everyone to episode 51. I see everybody saying hi in the comment chat. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 51 of the Game Changers. I'm your host, Carla, tonight, and I have a fantastic episode lined for you. I'm thrilled to welcome my special guest for tonight, Jameson Hutchinson. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience that I'm sure you will find enlightening. We will dive deep into some engaging discussions and explore fascinating topics. Stay tuned for an insightful and entertaining show. Before I dive into tonight's episode, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Evan, Iggy, JC, and the TSA family for their invaluable support in providing me with this platform to engage with distinguished individuals within our community. Join me as I explore the lives and stories of my guests, uncovering their personal insights, experiences in fantasy football, and much more. The Game Changers is not your ordinary podcast. It has fostered a cherished community, and I'm honored to share this journey with all of you this evening. Who is Jameson Hutchinson? Jameson is our longtime viewer. He has been a loyal viewer for the Game Changers podcast for some time now. I had the pleasure of meeting him at the expo 2 years ago with JJ. Those who have had the opportunity to meet Jameson can attest to his kind, respectful, and sweet demeanor. This year at the expo, I was thrilled to see him again and consider him a cherished friend. Jameson has been a passionate fantasy football player since 2006, starting his journey in junior high. Born in West Virginia, he's a dedicated West Virginia University Mountaineers fan. His childhood years in Boston fostered a love for the Red Sox and Celtics, while his admiration for LaDainian Tomlinson led him to support the San Diego Chargers until their move to LA. Nowadays, Jameson cheers for individual players rather than specific team. Jameson's interests extend beyond football. He trained to become a professional wrestler, beginning in high school and continuing into college, fueled by a lifelong love of wrestling. Currently residing in the heart of Indiana's cornfields, Jameson is married and a proud father to his 6-year-old son, Warren. The family also includes two beloved dogs. In his free time, Jameson enjoys watching UFC and playing poker. Professionally, Jameson co-hosts the Ride or Dynasty show with JJ and Joe Harlow and hosts a Sunday DFS and IDP Plus, where he discusses game and players. His experience in DFS includes contribution to FF Face Off last year. Although he once ran his own website, he now focuses on creating content through more manageable avenues. Jameson, I cannot wait to get to know you tonight. And welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good. I don't think there's a better intro than that, and I think for me it probably just goes all downhill from here. But I appreciate how well that was, and I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh my God, the honor is mine, Jameson. I can't wait to dive into everything that you have in life from wrestling with everything that I see in wrestling because I was, watching wrestling when I was, a child myself with my parents. So I'm like so excited to talk a lot about wrestling as well. So let's start with some general fantasy football questions for you. What strategies do you use when drafting your fantasy football team?
I've always went with obviously the best player available. This year I did a lot of zero RB, which has kind of hit, kind of hasn't been. This year, like last year was kind of a mess, and this year so far through 4 weeks has been an absolute disaster. I think most people can attest to that. But I've gotten to the point where I've just gotten into so many leagues that I've starting to not be able to keep up. So I probably I'll say I'll dial back, and then it gets to like, July next year, and then I'm back in the well adding all these leagues again. But um, it just I kind of just let the draft come to me, and I can make it and manage however which way. So sometimes I could take. This year I did a lot of early tight end. That's all. Like I said, that's been a disaster too. But it just I just kind of make whatever I can work with the draft board coming to me.
So tell me, why it's a disaster? Is it because of the injuries that we're seeing and we're foreseeing lately with the
It's the
teams?
injuries. It's the injuries. It's like the players, like the first 2 rounds, everybody is hurt or didn't show up. I think my teams would have been better if I just didn't draft in the first 2 rounds and started at round 3. Like Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill without Tua is not even worth starting. It's been kind of a mess, but just like everybody else, just got to get through it. Work the waiver wire, um, and just keep praying that the fantasy team shows up each Sunday.
Well, we only
Gotta
hope,
do what you gotta
right?
do. Gotta do what you
Yes,
gotta do.
I agree. So, what's your biggest fantasy football regret?
For this year,
Yes,
ooh,
or
I would
any year.
say trying to think this year. Man, that's kind of tough. Trying to probably a lot of the early tight end stuff. Like I've drafted a lot of Trey McBride. I'm happy about that, but I also took a lot of Mark Andrews. That was looking back on it, coming off the injury last year. I probably shouldn't have taken him as high as I did. Kind of looking back, but I didn't have much Travis Kelsey. I didn't do a whole lot of Kyle Pitts, but just Dalton Kincaid's another guy I took a lot of. I thought he'd take the next step, and he's been fine. But when you're drafting them third, fourth round, they need to be some of the greatest players of all time, and they've just been average to say the least. But that and just I missed out on a lot of the high end running backs just because I didn't take them. Like I said, I did a lot of zero RB, and it's been fine. But Saquon Barkley's been great. Jahmyr Gibbs has been pretty good so far. So just some guys that looking back, I could have been a little more open to, but I just thought I can figure out something else. Howdy, babe. How are you doing?
Babe is in the building. So, talking about the players, Jameson, which player do you think will be the biggest breakout star this season?
Probably Jaden Reed, which he's already. I think people have seen the couple games that he's had. He played basically the first game with Jordan Love in week 1 against the Eagles, and then he played with Malik Willis, and he was fine. And then last week against the Vikings, he ended up being really good. I think people see that he's okay. They don't realize he's wide receiver 5 overall. And I mean, the Packers offense hasn't even really gotten started now that Jordan Love's back. So I'd say probably Jaden Reed. A lot of this offseason, a lot of people were trying to figure out which wide receiver to take. Is Christian Watson going to hit his ceiling? Is he going to as his hamstrings are going to hold up. What about Romeo Dobbs? They got Bo Melton. They have the 2 tight ends in Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. But I would say Jaden Reed, and I still don't think people all the way realize his potential for the rest of the season.
And which player do you think is the most overrated in fantasy football right now?
The entire Atlanta Falcons. And I, for the most part, did not buy in. And I will say this with all due respect. I love Bijan Robinson, the player. His fantasy production has not come even close for him being like a borderline first round talent. So it's just been very frustrating. Kyle Pitts, which it is what it is. It's Kyle Pitts. I think for most people, we're just going to retire and move on with our lives. But even Drake London getting drafted that high, and he's been okay, but just the offense in general hasn't been good for what you guys or what we've spent draft capital wise on him. But especially Bijan Robinson, who I hope they just give the ball to him 25 times and let him run wild. But it doesn't seem to be the case. So it's been frustrating. There's a lot of those guys that have been frustrating.
Yeah. How do you predict game scripts will affect player performances for this week?
It starts a lot in the trenches with the offensive line, the defensive line. That's usually where I go to. So for example, this past week, the Bengals and the Carolina Panthers, I play a lot of DFS, and this is kind of the part that goes into it. I knew that both of these teams would score a lot just because both defenses were atrocious. I made a joke about the Bengals on Sunday that they were down 2 defensive tackles, so and they were just looking for whoever they could pick up at a local high school. That's how bad it had been getting for them. So just I knew that Chuba Hubbard would have a good game. You knew that Andy Dalton was going to just lock on to Deontay Johnson. He ended up having a good game too. And then on the reverse, the week before, I mean, Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow looked, the part and looked, kind of like the offense was good again. So just starting there in the trenches, offensive, defensive line, and then kind of working your way through. We've got a couple corners like Patrick Surtain for the Denver Broncos. He's locked down, DK Metcalf, George Pickens so far this year, Garrett Wilson this past week. So some of that is not as prominent as it used to be. I think a lot of people looked at that metrics back in the day and thought it was the gospel. And some of it still stands out, but some of it doesn't. But that's, like I said, usually the trenches. And then, if you have a star player most of the weeks, you just need to play them. You shouldn't be thinking twice and getting, goofy about that stuff. I call it tinkering. My dad, when he was playing fantasy football, he would tell me he lost and he was like, I tinkered this week. And it's like, Dad, I told you to do this. Why did you tinker? And then I don't tinker anymore. I just set it and forget it.
So talking about that, Jameson, how did you start your fantasy football journey?
Well, I didn't realize how long ago until you asked what year, and then I told you. But growing up, my dad has always been a lifelong Cincinnati Bengals fan. So we would do the Bengals. They would always be playing at noon, and then in the afternoon the Chargers would play in the 3 o'clock window. So I was watching that with him ever since I was little. But growing up, I'd watch them, and then I saw LaDainian Tomlinson when he was having his big run. He broke the record in 2006. The Chargers were in their powder blues, and I love that. And then I just kind of locked into that. So I ended up being a Chargers fan. And then I got invited in junior high to be a part of a fantasy football draft, my first one ever. And my very first pick overall was Philip Rivers, which, if I admit that now, it's just embarrassing how bad it is. It'd be like picking Zach Wilson #1 overall, but it was, I've loved it. I've loved the strategy. I've loved all the off-season stuff, all the effort that I put into, trying to put the puzzles together. And then, it's week 4 and somebody's taking a hammer to the puzzle. But I digress. But it just it started there. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that I enjoy is just because hanging out with my dad on the weekends, doing all that stuff with him.
Nice. So you have a son who's 6 years old. Is he interested
Yep.
at all in fantasy football?
Hit or miss. We got invited. Scott Fish sent out a tweet to do like a kids league, and I
Yes.
got him into his first one this year. And he likes the Dolphins just because they're Dolphins, and then he likes Joe Burrow. So I got him all the Dolphins players, which has not been great. I got him Joe Burrow, and he's 2-2 right now, but he has had 2 of the most remarkable comebacks I've ever seen from a 6-year-old playing fantasy football. So I know he doesn't care, but it means the world to me, so we'll just leave it at that. But it depends on the day. Sometimes he's in the mood for it. Sometimes he'd rather be, jumping on the trampoline or watching TV or playing Zelda or whatever he does. So it depends on the day.
It's something that a
He's a
six-year
kid.
old should do, right?
He's a kid. So as long as he's
Yes,
not gambling
I
on it
agree.
yet.
Can you share a memorable moment from your fantasy football journey?
It's been a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones. Last year, I think just from recent memory, I had an 0-6 fantasy football team, and I didn't do anything with it because I thought it was good, and it just was losing in some very stupid ways. And I ended up winning 6 straight. I ended up getting in the playoffs because I outbeat somebody's score by like 2 points. So I mean, I didn't belong
Wow.
in the playoffs, but I ended up winning the championship because of it. And I knew that I had a good team. I don't know how I even got there. It was kind of luck. The guy in front of me, his team like crapped the bed so bad that he scored like 50 points. I mean, that's how bad it was. But I ended up getting in. And once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. So I ended up winning the league, and it was just kind of remarkable, honestly, just because I didn't tinker with it. I didn't try to tear it down and build it back. I just kind of rode the wave, and I didn't expect to get in the playoffs, but once I did, it ended up working out pretty well. So I've had a lot of uh, bad times too. I mean, I can rattle off more bad times than I've had good times, just because you
Good
always
time.
remember the bad ones worse.
I love that too. I love it. So in for fantasy football with your teams, how many teams you manage, and what's the most challenging part in managing the fantasy football teams?
I think I have 16 to 18 managed leagues at the moment, and then I have all the best ball stuff, and I've got a couple high stakes leagues. But the hardest part right now is waivers because especially the
Yeah.
first couple weeks, that's really what helps make your team. So I spend every Tuesday afternoon at work. I have an allotted time for like an hour and a half. I go through all of my teams and put in my waiver request, and then I check them Wednesday morning, and then I'll check again Wednesday afternoon again just to see if anybody's dropped them. But that's really been the hardest part of it. You know, setting line sometimes like I had a league 2 weeks ago. One guy was out and I just missed it because I had too much going on. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. But for the most part, I have to stay organized. I'm a very organized person, or else I don't work that way. Like my wife's the opposite. Her best work is done if she's got a deadline at midnight. 11:58 is her best work. Like she cannot do it a week ahead. I can't. No, it's miserable. I mean, I won't say anything because I love her to death, and that's how she operates. I guess pressure makes diamonds, and that's what she is. But I mean, I can't do it. I got to be like a week out. So it's just organization for me.
Not always. You're so much like Doug. You love organization too. I'm that person that wait for last minute sometimes. So let's talk a little bit about UFC. I'm gonna move a little bit from football to UFC
Okay.
because I know that wrestling is something that you really cherish, and I see it a lot on Twitter. So for people that who don't know what UFC means, do you want to share a little bit about it?
It's Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's basically mixed martial arts. So I've watched
Yes.
that. It seems like forever, and that's been. It seems like every Saturday night starts at about 9 o'clock, and I end up going to bed at like 2 a.m. and then I have to wake up at 5:36 on Sunday morning to work on lineups and work on my DFS show. So that's been something I've really for the last maybe 10 years, and I mean it kind of goes in the same realm. I've been watching wrestling since I was 4 years old. So I think that was something that my dad thought I would grow out of. And now I'm 31 years old and unfortunately haven't. So it's, but no, I don't, sounds kind of weird. I don't, and like, I don't have too many hobbies, but the stuff I do, like, I'm very into. I've got the couple things that I enjoy and I just kind of keep it simple. But it's, like I said, I enjoy it. I can really like get myself emotionally attached into it, I guess. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but just kind of how I am. But it's like I said, I enjoy it a lot. I've got some fighter shorts behind me. Of course, you guys can't see, but it's usually like every Saturday night, and I keep up and all that stuff. So if I mess with this camera, you guys won't find me the rest of the night. I won't be able to put it back together.
So Mel is asking if UFC is in the cages.
Yep.
Do you wanna
So
answer that?
yep, it's the octagon with the cages. So it's got the cage and that's the real stuff, and then the pro wrestling's the fake stuff. And if we talk about pro wrestling for too long, I think everybody would just leave. I'm surprised anybody except for me even entertains the thought of it. But it's like I said, I've loved it all my life, and I thought I'd outgrow it, but never did. So UFC is real, and then wrestling is I call it staged. Some people call it fake. It's
Yes.
just whatever preference you would like to. You're not going to offend me anymore. I used to get mad back when I was in like junior high, but it doesn't. Yeah, there we go. They're both real. Thank you, JC. I appreciate that.
What drew you to become a fan of UFC?
Do what now?
What drew you to become a fan?
Oh, I think it's just the competition and just all the different ways that you could go about things. Like you can be a boxer, you can be a kickboxer, or Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's all different ways to win. You can be a wrestler. That's like a big thing right now. Um, it just the variety of stuff, and it can all end up the same way. Like a lot of guys will just be submission artists. There's people who are knockout artists. There's, like I said, wrestlers who will just, try to out wrestle you for 25 minutes. And yeah, like the Mel said, like the diets are crazy, the weight cuts, just all the effort that goes into them. They go in these camps for like 6 to 8 weeks, and all they
Yes.
do is train, and for basically 15 to 25 minutes. And it just, I don't know. It just, I guess it kind of goes with wrestling, just the competition that I enjoy so much. Same with all the sports.
That's nice. Who's your all-time favorite UFC fighter and why?
I like Brian Ortega. I just, he lost a couple weeks ago, and that hurt my soul. But it's,
Oh,
I just like the way he fights. He's basically a submission artist, and he can just pull wild submissions out of anywhere in the world. I mean, he can catch you in a flying chokehold. He can wrap you up and wrap you up like a pretzel. I mean, he can do all sorts of different stuff. The problem is he's not a very good striker, and he gets just beaten up to hell. Like within 5 minutes, his face is all busted up. But it's just
oh,
part of the process. But he's been my favorite for a while now.
yeah. So Greg is asking if they allow guns, knives, and brass knuckles in the
Not yet.
UFC.
Not yet. Maybe down the
Hopefully not.
road, but
Usually
maybe
guns,
not. But maybe
no.
down the road.
That's insane. What's the most exciting UFC fight you've ever watched? And did you watch one live?
I've not. I've seen some local stuff live. I probably need to make it to a UFC event. They just don't get very close. Like a last like couple of years, they get within like 3 hours from here. But I would say probably Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega, because Brian Ortega was like 2 seconds from beating him in a chokehold, and somehow he outlasted it. And then Brian Ortega lost. But I was playing poker that night, and I asked everybody to stop so I can watch the fight. And I'm
You
screaming
kidding?
and hollering, and like I'm doing my light coaching, which is me, cussing at the TV, unfortunately. But and it just like I thought he had him, and they didn't, and then he ended up losing. It was just it's like so close
Oh,
but so far away.
oh
So
my God, that's awesome though. That's crazy. Do like talking about the family a little bit with wrestling and fantasy football, does your wife share any of these like special stuff with you with the wrestling and fantasy football, or you just do that by yourself, like you watch it by
I
yourself?
I think, with all due respect, I think my wife is embarrassed and ashamed of the wrestling stuff. She just ignores it. Like if we're in the living room, she'll just put her headphones on and just she'll look up, and then when
Really?
she looks up, it's the worst, most embarrassing wrestling thing ever, and then she just kind of rolls her eyes and goes back to whatever she's doing. She's kind of into the Chiefs last year. I think Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift
Oh,
brought a
I
lot of
love
that.
her.
Yeah, she's got a Chiefs sweatshirt now, so but she she keeps up with it a little bit. Her family is big baseball family. They're all big St. Louis Cardinals fans. And when we met, the Cardinals and the Red Sox were in the World Series like right after we met. So that was kind of a bonding moment, just me trash talking her and her family, right when I meet them. So probably not the best way to go about it, but just
Trash
kind of how
talk
it
and
goes.
bonding moment.
So
Love
that's
it.
like I've gone to baseball games with her dad, who's a big Cardinals fan, and like I said, her mom is big. Like the whole entire family. I remember, it's kind of going off topic. We were at one of her family members' weddings, and the Cardinals and the Cubs were playing in the postseason. And you can see in the wedding pictures, like there's one person who's got the phone underneath the table, just so like they're trying to watch the game as like the wedding is kind of going apart. And they try to hide it for the most part, but you can kind of see it. But they live and die by it. So it's probably not the
That's
most professional thing in
nice.
the world, but it priorities. Priorities.
By the way, there's no off topics on the show, so you can say whatever you want. It's fine with me. That's really really nice. So, if you could wrestle any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Probably my favorite wrestler ever, Bret Hart. So that's just I don't know. He's too old now, and I'm too old. I can barely move as well, and he's like 25 years older than I am. But I'd say probably him. He's always my favorite. I went to my first event when I was 4 years old, so I did that. I've got the Bret Hart shirt that it was an adult small, and it went down like to my ankles. That was the smallest shirt that they had, and I grew into it like 5 years later after the fact. But there's a picture somewhere of it. But I'd say probably him. He was always my favorite.
You should share it and tag the game changers with it.
I can do
I would
that.
love to
I can
see
do that.
that. I would love to see that. If you could create your own wrestling promotion, what would it be like?
I think it'd just be probably oh man, kind of tough. It'd be probably more storyline based. A lot of people like just the wrestling aspect without the story, and I mean, I can get that too. But I just like I said earlier, I've always wanting to buy into stuff, and a lot of the stuff I remember is just like big storylines. So a couple years ago they had the John Cena and The Rock, and it's just like the match
Yes.
itself is kind of whatever, but it's just the build up, and I think that's what I would focus on. But it's wrestling's changed a lot in the last especially last decade. A lot of uh, new faces. They bring back some of the stars, like WrestleMania. They brought back all the big ones in the main event, like John Cena and all that stuff. But it'd have a good mix of everything, I think. So it just kind of a little all over the place.
Greg wants some girls with big hooters in bikinis. Would you do that?
I, with all due respect, I'll leave that to Greg. I'd be happy to have. There's plenty of great women wrestlers that they don't have to be uh, the ones with the hooters and bikinis. So that's like I said, there's a lot of John Cena fans. A lot of people grew up on that. So, um, I saw Hema earlier asked who my favorite luchador was, and I would say
Yeah,
probably Juventud Guerrero. So he was a part of WCW back in the day, and he was always a lot of fun for me. I like Mordos
good,
the
good.
Beast. He's a big luchador with he looks like a big bull right now. He's pretty awesome. So um that's I think like I said, that's my favorite one right now. And then Juventud was my one, but he was back in WCW in like the late '90s. So
Yeah. So JC is asking, did you really see the John Cena, and how did you see him? How did you see him?
well, I didn't technically see him. See, that's an inside joke. I wish he'd follow me on Twitter though. He follows everybody else, just not me. But uh so we'll get there
John Cena.
eventually.
We will get there. Definitely, we will get there. So I want to ask a little bit about wrestling and fantasy football. So how do you think like wrestling experience influence your approach to fantasy football, or did it influence that, or no?
Not really. It's probably two totally different things. Like I've seen Seth Rollins, he's a big fantasy football guy, I think. He's a famous guy right now, but as far as they almost live in two separate worlds. Sometimes they'll have like the NFL guy will go over to, WWE. Like we saw Pete Rose just died yesterday. He was at
Yeah,
WrestleMania 14. So just kind of those crossovers, but as far as them actually playing, I don't know if there's much to it just outside of the characters, I guess. Back in the day, I think Tom Brady would be like the bad guy, and if you like, I live in Indiana, so Peyton Manning would be the hero to Tom Brady being the villain, and that'd be the big clash. So outside of that, as far as like playing it though, I don't know if it crosses over too much. I wish
yeah.
it did.
Well, maybe it will one day. Who knows? So, tell me about the expo. I've been, this is my second year seeing you at the expo. How many years you've been going to the expo? And is this your second year or more?
This is my second year, so I guess I can start from the beginning there because it gets kind of interesting. I guess
Yes.
I like was trying to get more into content and I didn't really know how to, I guess, dive into it, so to speak, which a lot's changed now with the internet and all that stuff. So I saw that they were going to have an expo, but I followed a couple people. I didn't realize there was a fantasy football community with all these people and all that stuff. And my wife, she runs her own business and we kind of talked and she was like, I'm going to take
Nice.
this head on and you can take this head on. So I basically signed up to go to the expo. I didn't know anybody, nervous, didn't know if I even should even attempt to be going. But I went, I drove the 6.5 hours, and I saw Jim Coventry in the Discord for the expo. He was like, "We're meeting at this place on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock." And I was like, I don't know Jim. I didn't know he existed until this thing, but I just thought it'd be like a normal, like just bunch of random people show up and, kind of introduce each other and all that stuff. So I get there, I arrive like 10 minutes after 2, and I walk in and I see nobody. And I'm like, "Oh, really? This is how we're going to start this." So I walk in, I do what any normal person does and just head to the bathroom in the back just so I can scope the place out. And right before the bathroom, there was a party room to the right, and I see a big long table, and I see Jim, but I see Scott Fish and, Hema and Mauricio. JJ was there, Jody Smith, Kevin Tompkins, Faith was there. All these people that I've seen on the internet who didn't know who the hell I was. I was like, oh boy, this is not how I wanted to. Like they were all sitting and just doing their thing. So I went to the bathroom and I like kind of looked at the mirror for a second. I had two options. I can go introduce myself to a table of people that don't know who the hell I am, or I can do what any normal person does and just go back to the hotel and do something else later on. So, but I ended up walking up and I said, "Hey, I'm Jameson." I shook everybody's hand. I saw Jim at the end. I said, "Hey, can I pull up a chair?" I did, and if I wouldn't had done that, I don't think I would have had the experience I had at the expo. That was the first time I met JJ Winter, who some of you know, but if you don't, greatest person on earth. Um,
I
Jody
agree.
Smith is another guy. Two of the people who I would call best friends now, who didn't know who I was in the world, until I walked up to that table. So, and Jody and JJ, we went to a Pirates game the day before the expo, that Wednesday this past year. So just kind of going from a nobody to that table to making lifelong friends. That's kind of is what the expo is all about. So for anybody who has never been, just how welcoming it is, how awesome everybody is. Just like any normal person who doesn't until 2 years ago have much experience in the, kind of community. It's you get real nervous that there's big groups, and I mean everybody's welcoming and they'll buy you a beer. They don't even know what your name is. Hey, you need a beer? Sure. Like, hey, come hang out. It's just I think that really speaks about how great the fantasy community is. So that was how I started the expo 2 years ago and haven't really looked back ever since.
I agree with you 100%. I honestly thought that you and JJ like were friends before the expo. To tell me that story that you met at the expo, and then I really like did not even realize that you've never met before.
No, it's probably me following him around endlessly, but no, that's just who JJ is. We just kind of clicked, and
Yeah.
we were at the hotel bar after the dinner thing, and then we really didn't leave each other aside for the most, the rest of the weekend. I will never forget how he introduced me to Doug. It was like midnight or 1 o'clock, and we are coming back from somewhere. I think it was that Thursday or Friday, and JJ Doug is in walking out the door, and we're walking in, and he's like, "Hey, do you know Doug Orth?" And it's like, JJ, you asked me this 100 times. I told you I don't know anybody here. And we talked for a minute, and then I remember I think it's like the Friday or Saturday night party that they had at the football field. I got to talk with Doug for like 20, 25 minutes, just kind of pick his brain. He does obviously the high stakes stuff. That's what I'm interested in. And it was just awesome. Like, no offense to Doug, I didn't know who he was before. Like I said, I didn't know anybody. And just
Yeah.
have those interactions with, some of the people you would call bigwigs in the industry. They're just normal people, just like you and I, and just be able to become friends with them, talk like for the fantasy football being the expo being about football, don't really talk much about football, to be honest. It's most, everything else and just the camaraderie and all that good stuff. So it's just like I said, if you haven't been thinking about going or on the fence, you need to go. If you need me to force you to go, I will. I'll buy your ticket, whatever we need to do. But it's just like I said, it's been awesome the last couple of years, and it's been the highlight of my year each the last 2 years, bar none.
Me too. I mean, I don't play fantasy football, and I wait for that, that week to go and see everybody. I love it. This is
Right.
this year was my third year. going with Doug.
Right.
It's just an amazing, amazing experience to just be there, connect with people, and like talking to them and experience new stuff, which is really great. So, talking about the expo a little bit, talking about your second year, how did you feel after your first year, not knowing everyone and just being there and connecting with the new people, knowing more, and connecting with the people that you knew from the first year? How did you feel about it?
It's nice. Just that every conversation doesn't have to be, "Hey, I'm Jameson." It's just instead it's like, "Hey, it's good to see you again." People that we've interacted with or, talked throughout the entire year. It's kind of weird, like the fantasy football community, and I don't mean this as like a bad thing, but there's people in
Yeah.
the community I talk to more than people I've talked the last, 10 years who are considered friends. And I think that's part of the special, you know, part of this community is just the interactions and the friendships that you make. And even though we're on different sides of the world or the planet or whatever, just be able to, have this as our connection and just kind of be able to grow friendships and relationships from it. Like I said, it's much easier the second year just to be able to go in and say hey instead of hi, I'm Jameson. Feel so, yeah, I wouldn't say out of place because I didn't feel much of that, but just having to do the whole introduction thing.
Yeah, I agree. So Greg is asking, how did you feel? For me, how did I feel my first year? My first year, I was Doug's girlfriend. The second year,
Yep.
I was Carla. Doug is my boyfriend. So he was the one behind me, Greg. So I was the one bringing him next year, not him
There you
bringing me
go.
the first year. So that's that's how it was. He took me to the expo the first year, and I met everybody, and I met you, Greg,
Yep.
and I had the opportunity to start a great thing with the Game Changers, and this was the highlight of something that I never thought of my life, honestly, and getting to know you guys the in a different way, not just in the fantasy football community, and getting to know more about who you are is really amazing, and it opens a lot of different doors on how how life is, and how you are not different from anybody in the community, or we have so much similarities. Scotch fish bowl life draft is like that. I agree, it
Yes, it
is.
is.
And I did one. Did you talking about Scotch fish bowl, did you do one life draft, Jameson, as well?
Yep. This is my second year, so I've got not a
Nice.
deep of a story, but my first year I had tried like the year before. I didn't get in, and some of it just like any normal person. Now it's probably for the big wigs. It doesn't really, like I said, I didn't know much about the community until then. I've been playing fantasy
Yeah.
football, but I was so naive to this little universe. But I had applied, and I was doing like the races on YouTube, and I would always lose. And I was just like, I'm trying to interact. I donate. I do all this stuff, and I was like, I guess it's just not happening. So I will never forget. It was a Friday. I had had a terrible day at work. I came home. I was all mad about it, and I got an email saying, "Scott Fish, you are invited." Totally
That-
changed like my entire day, and then just be able to go. I got the last spot at the live draft in Cincinnati, one that John Bosch runs, and it's awesome. It's been this past year too, and that's kind of the same thing. Just the friends that I made from the first one to be able to see everybody the second year, and just it's awesome. My team's been okay so far. It's a little goofy, but like I said, that's an awesome event too that I didn't really know a whole lot about until, like I said, we got into this little bubble that we have.
yeah, I went to Boston, honestly. Again, like I don't play, but I went with Doug
Right.
to Boston to Fishbowl Live, and it's amazing how how many people you can meet and how many people you can interact with. It's really a different lifestyle, and it's amazing. So, when you become a father, how did it change your perspective on life and your hobbies, Jameson?
I had actually retired from fantasy football the first year. that I was like, I thought that I would have to throw everything I liked out the window just to be a dad. And I learned very quickly that I need to have hobbies to be myself. So I
Yeah,
took 1 year off of fantasy football, like I said, and just it's been he's my best friend. I mean, that's kind of we spend a ton of time together, and I've been the one thing I've noticed. I've tried to be very aware of like when we're around together that actually being a part of it. Like I'm jumping on the trampoline. I'm surprised I haven't torn an ACL yet, but I'm on the trampoline with him. Before this, we went to the park, and I know for a lot of people, I'm not calling anybody out. A lot of people just spend their time on their phone and put the kid on the iPad, and oh, they grow up so fast. I just wanted to make sure that I was a part of it and actually remember it and actually have memories and that stuff. So that's been the one thing. But my wife and I work very well together. Like she has her hobbies. We
I
make
love
sure
that.
that she can do her stuff, I can do my stuff. We don't fight or bicker or we both are able to have lives out. Like she does a podcast about books with a friend, and
Mhm.
like I said, she runs her own business and she does her things that she wants to do. I'm able to, play poker and, you know, have Sundays to watch football. We just coordinate that stuff. And I don't think everybody in the world has that relationship, which, I think would suck if you didn't. But we both make it very easy on one another. And it's important, especially as you get older. You lose contact with a lot of people, and a lot of people just go to work, come home, watch TV, and do it all over again. I think it's important to have hobbies and be able to still see friends and do all that stuff. And especially with parenting, he's older now, so he can be self-reliant and get his own snacks and stuff, which is
Yeah,
nice. But like I said, we do a lot of stuff with him too. So it's not for everybody. Like life changed, but it was not near as it was more of an adjustment than an entire life change, I guess. People make it seem like life is over, and it really hasn't been
it's not.
for us, at least.
No. I mean, I became a swimming official because my kids used to swim. So you will do anything and everything for them. Trust me.
Right.
Talking about poker, how did you start with playing poker?
It goes back to my dad. He played online poker before it got outlawed. I think it was like '08. He used to play a lot of online poker, and I would sit and watch him. And then if he'd have to go to the bathroom or get a drink or something, he'd let me play. And so I'd play for a couple minutes, and then I'd be escorted to passenger seat again. So that's I did that, and like I said, I try to play as much as I can. It's there's a couple tournaments around the area that I go to, and like I said, I host a monthly poker tournament with friends and stuff. But it's just I hope whenever I retire, I could just play poker full time, have the time to
Yeah.
do that. That's the goal. Probably not a great goal, but that's how I want to approach life. But it is what I did play poker at the expo. It was the worst 30 minutes I've ever played my entire life. I played two hands, I lost, and it was miserable. It was out of all the times I could play
It's
bad
an
poker,
expo.
that was the expo where no offense, not a lot of people knew what they were doing. It was just
Oh,
yeah, it was bad. It was bad. We're gonna erase that and move on.
it looks like dad was a big, like he was big in your life. He taught you a lot of things, like from poker to fantasy football to wrestling and everything that a lot. So he's
Yep.
been, in your life a lot. I don't know if you heard the question because I feel like it stopped for some reason.
Okay, you go again. So
So
I heard the part he was part of my life a lot, but I didn't hear the question.
so I hear a lot of that he was a big part
Yep.
of your life. So from poker to wrestling to fantasy football. So are you gonna like you're doing that? You're doing. It seems that you're doing the same with your son. That your dad was doing the same with like with you.
Yep.
Do you
Yeah,
agree with
that's the
that?
goal. Yeah. So I mean, like every Friday night, we go out. My wife does her podcast thing, and we go to the arcade or we go to, we went to the movies last week. We did
Yeah.
mini golf a couple weeks ago. He almost hit a car with a golf ball, but that's a different story for a different day. But just, I don't know. I just want to be present, and I think for a lot of younger people, maybe their parents weren't as present, and my family's kind of messed up. But it just, I just want to make sure that he has the best life that we can give him, and actually being present because I think for a lot of people now, I mean, times are tough for everybody, and just being
I
able
agree.
to be present and not be in front of a phone the entire time for it and actually know what's going on, I think is a pretty big deal. So and he's fun too, so that helps. If he was a butthole, things would be different, but no, he's a good kid.
He's a good kid. Of course, you have good parents, definitely. Can you
Right.
share a memorable poker game or hand that you've played?
Well, last week I lost, or 2 weeks ago, I think. I mean, it's brutal. I lost to a bigger, 4 of a kind, and then I had a 3 of a kind twice, and I lost to a full house. So it was, they were commenting about it. There was one guy at the table who was just running very hot, so I just kind of ran into the buzzsaw and kind of retire. But I've had a couple big ones. I remember I was playing a poker tournament and I beat a guy with quad four or quad queens, and he had quad fours, and I had hit it on the river, and the guy was very pissed off about it. He'd been drinking, but nothing. That's on him. That's not on me. So, but
No.
it's I don't know. I've had a lot of bad beats too. I feel like you said earlier, remember the bad stuff more than the good, unfortunately. But I don't know. I just enjoy it a lot. I enjoy the strategy. It kind of goes with fantasy football. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
strategy and different ways to go about it, and it's a game that you can't really perfect. And I think guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they always were trying to get better because they know they can never be perfect. And I think that's kind of goes part of it with fantasy football. I mean, you could do all the research and pick all the right players, and at the end of the day, somebody can still be hurt and still got to work around it. So that just kind of goes part of it.
I agree 100%. Do you have any tips for beginners who wants to play poker?
I would say, oh, it's kind of tough. Uh I would stay away from all the bluffing. I would just play pretty fundamental sound hands. Like if you get good ones, play them. If you are the small blind or the big blind, play them. If you're definitely at the big blind, have a decent hand. 3-bet instead of just limp in. That's stuff that I've learned. But that's for people who play. You're gonna have to see a lot of hands to get better. That's the main thing. The more you play, just like anything, the more you practice, the more you train, the better you get. The more hands you see, the more scenarios that you can kind of pick apart. There's a ton of stuff that would take hours to go into poker. I'm not even a good poker player. I just enjoy playing in.
Did you ever bluffed? What's your worst hand that you bluffed into a win? Greg is asking.
Oh, there's a lot of them. I mean, if I'm in the big blind, and I mean I'll 3-bet 2-7 offsuit sometimes just to be stupid, and people will fold. But I don't remember like an actual big hand. I've played a lot of poker, unfortunately. I hate to admit it, but
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your Ride or Dynasty show. How did you get started with the Ride or Dynasty show?
well, I was actually a guest for JJ Winter and Joe Harlow. They were doing it, and we
Yep.
just kind of hit it off. And I didn't know Joe, but I knew JJ, and he did it. And he's like, "Hey, you want to come back the next week?" I was like, sure, if you need somebody. And then he was like, "You just want to be a part of it full time?" Because we all meshed together really well, and
Yeah.
it's been awesome. I mean, we've did spent the whole off season talking about college players. That's probably the most I've ever dived in or worked on college players, and it's honestly been really helpful just to be a part of that, and going into the season, and staying on top of all the news and the injuries, and it's a lot of dynasty focus, so looking ahead a year or two, that kind of goes a part of the equation as well. And just it's been a lot of fun. I think they're, like I said, two of the best people on earth, and it makes life a lot easier when you do it with people that you enjoy and you love. So it's like I said, it's been
I agree.
awesome. I was hoping to find like a place or a home, and it's been, like I said, it worked out perfectly with JJ. I like I said earlier, I couldn't ask for a better friend than him. I think I mean, you already know that as well. He's the man.
He is. I love him so much. So he knows that. How do you prepare for each episode for your show?
Right now, we've been doing two topics for just like dynasty stuff. So this week, going to talk about Jaden Daniels and kind of he's been doing really well. Are we overreacting to it? Can we sell high? Can we, you know, can't really buy low, but are you riding the wave of how good he's been? We'll get into the metrics of that and talking about like the Falcons players. They've been really overrated for a long time. Is things going to get better? Is it time just kind of take your loss and sell them? So, it's a lot of that. Like I said, we usually JJ's really good about having a template, and
Yes,
he's very organized, and he's got his
he is.
intro, and he's got everything down word to word, and I'm mumbling and stuttering through all of my stuff, but it just like I said, the in season's pretty easy. We just pick a couple topics, but off season we went by position, did a lot of research, a lot of studying, athletic profiles. I went to the combine this past year for the first time, got to see a lot of that in person. That was really cool, and just
Nice.
it's been like I said, I've always wanted to do this, like the fantasy football stuff, and until the last couple years where content creating has really taken off, unless you had like
Yep.
a degree and like try to work for the news or something, there really wasn't any of this unless you were Matthew Berry. So it's been awesome that anybody who has any work ethic and will put some time and effort into it can, be doing like what I'm doing tonight. I think this is awesome. Makes me feel more important than I really am to be on the show. And like with JC behind the scenes, Iggy, two of the greatest people on
Yes.
earth. So it just, like I said, it's been awesome.
That's great. So, what topics or segments do you find resonate most with your audience on the show?
I think it kind of depends. A lot of the younger players right now in Dynasty, I think that's been a big one. The college stuff actually was awesome, especially wide receivers. Everybody has a fascination for wide receivers. It was, all off season we just talked about drafting wide receivers and we'll just, punt running backs and it's kind of work, but that's people love those. It's I don't know. It's wide receivers has always been the main focus, and just a lot of the younger guys. We talked 2 weeks ago about Terry McLaurin, who's an older wide receiver. Christian McCaffrey, he's older. What to do with him now that he's hurt? That's kind of a fiasco. You can't really sell him high, but you know who's buying him and just stuff like that. Trying to work through those scenarios. It's tough in these streets right now.
Yeah, it is. So, how I want to talk a little bit about your content creating journey and your contribution to the FF face off. So,
Yep.
what's your role in at the FF face off, and what did you enjoy most about it?
So I did my own website. It was probably been 4 or 5 years ago. It was terrible. I had a template that my wife found on the internet. I would just rip off pictures from NFL.com and put like Arial 12 font. It looked terrible. It's embarrassing compared to like all the stuff people do now. But I basically ranted. There was no Grammarly, so I didn't proofread any of it. I'm sure it wasn't even readable, but I did that. But between the graphics, updating the website, by the time I actually got to the content, I was worn out and I did it for, I think I got to like week 15. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And it was basically, I'd upload it on Facebook for my friends who always ask me for advice or love hearing me rant. And I was just like, I can't do it anymore. So I went on Twitter and I just searched, fantasy football, and I saw FF Face Off, and I reached out to Anthony Servino, who's awesome. And he let me, I wrote like an article or two, and then I did the DFS show for him. So I've been playing DFS for a long time. And every Sunday I'd either have a guest or I would just, do it solo. And that was my intro to video stuff. They did a mental health podathon, and
Yes.
they did 12 hours on Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday. I had not really had any video experience, and they asked for volunteers, and I just told them I can do the entire 12 hours on Sunday. I was like, well, I can do 12 1-hour shows through 12 weeks, or I could just get 12 hours of experience right off the bat. And I mean, it was kind of wild. I think I held up pretty well, but it's just my thought process of just on anything. I would tell anybody if they needed advice, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you grow. And for me, doing 12
I agree.
hours when I'd never really done any video stuff, it was, I got 12 hours experience more than I ever would have doing 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and interviewed a lot of people that I didn't know, a lot of big wigs, a lot of just fancy football creators, and it was an awesome experience. And then, like I said, did DFS for a year with them, and then JJ met him at the expo, and he was like, you want to do this?" And I just kind of did that with him, and then it's under IDP Plus, and they asked me to do DFS, so I just thought I'd bring the DFS show that I do Sunday mornings with over to IDP Plus as well. So this is my second year with, I guess, an official uh, website or affiliation, I guess.
That's nice. What advice would you give someone looking to start their own fantasy football content?
You just got to do it. I mean, I think a lot of people wait for the perfect opportunity. They, start with equipment and they're always looking for the best equipment. I can't do this until I have the $200 microphone or the better. You just got to do it. And you're going to suck the first time. Nobody was worse on planet Earth. And I mean, I'm monotone. I look miserable all the time. So I'm probably not the prettiest person to be doing this, but it's, you just got to do it and you have to get reps. And I think this community is more welcoming than ever. One of my first, I guess, guest appearances was with Iggy on the game show. I think it was probably been 2 years ago. He was in the FF Face Off chat and he was like, "Hey, we need somebody." And I was just like, "Here's an opportunity." Me and him kind of hit it off. And, I think I lost an overtime that day in the game show. And then I finally got a win down the road. But if you see an opportunity, you just have to take it. So if there's somebody out there on
Mhm.
Twitter like, "Hey, we need a writer," even if you don't think you're qualified, just reach out like, "Hey," and I'd love to have this opportunity. If there's somebody asking to be on a show, just do it. You don't need to wait for the perfect opportunity or wait for the perfect setup. You just have to get off your ass and do it. I mean, that's basically
I
how it
agree.
gets. That's how you do it. So, and I think, I mean, especially for me, I remember I did a DFS video for like setting it up, and it was my first time doing solo, and I thought I had like 30 minutes of content, and I had it all written out, and within 2 minutes I got inside my head and I did about 30 minutes of content in about 3, and it was in front of nobody, and I was just like embarrassed and ashamed because I stuttered. I got lost. I erased it immediately because that's how embarrassed I was, and I don't think
No,
anybody saw it, thankfully, but it was just I went in afterwards and I was like, "Man, I don't want to do this anymore. That was embarrassing." And my wife like kind of whooped my ass and was just like, "No, you're not going to quit after this. You got to go out and do it again." And
I
it
love
just
her.
yeah, that's how she is. So she's the best. But it's
Yeah,
like I said, for anybody out there who is scared, or I think we get really wrapped up in a lot of, you have to be analytical or you have to be a film person or you have to be funny. You have to be yourself. I mean, there's going to be a audience for everybody. So that's just like I said, and you have to get reps, and if there's opportunities out there, you have to take it. You don't know what you can do until you try, and if you're not trying, then you're not going to be able to do anything at all.
I agree. I mean, look at me. Who knew that I can do a podcast? I mean, Greg
Right?
put me
And you're killing
with
it.
JC and Iggy. Thank you. I appreciate it. He put me with, JC and Iggy, and he said, "Okay, we want to just meet up with someone. Would you care doing a one day show? One day show.
Right.
It's my 51 podcast
Right.
with you tonight, Jameson. I'm like so happy. I'm so honored to be part of this community. I love it. I knew just I love that. I love it a lot. So talking a little bit more about the Game Changer podcast. I know that you are someone that love to watch podcasts.
I
How
do.
many podcasts would you say you watch a week?
I do a lot of listening to them because I work by myself, so I have a earphone or AirPod in all day. I think I'm subscribed to about 20 of them, and I can get through them throughout the week. And then, like I said, I try to support all of my friends. And
That's
I mean,
amazing.
well, you guys, I mean, I've been here every week that I can, and which has
Yeah.
been most of them, I will say, with all due respect. I've been here for a lot of them, but just I try to, like I said, I try to support my friends because I feel like a lot of people in this community has supported me more than people I actually know, like in real life, like friends. The amount of people who don't know me who share my stuff or reach out and say kind words or tune in, I kind of wild to think about, and I'm sure you'd probably say the same thing. Just the support that obviously the sports affiliation and just all the people in the community. So I'd just say for that, it's been kind of wild to say the least. Just like I had two
Mhm.
DMs today from people I've never met who I wish would follow me, but they asked for fantasy football advice. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they came from. And it was just like I got two questions today. It's like makes me feel kind of good. I mean, I used to get those questions from my friends like at Sunday at 11:59 when kickoffs at noon, but it's just kind of wild. It's like I said, I wanted to be a wrestler and I wanted to be a fantasy football, I guess, content creator, and I've been able to do both, and it's been pretty awesome.
That's awesome. I just love that. Um, so what are your future goals for your fantasy football content creation?
I I think for me, I just want to be able to dive a little deeper. I What I need is time, just like everybody else in the world. If I could
Yes.
buy time, I would. I try to do my best with research and stuff. I would love to be more analytical with it. I love listening to podcasts who get behind the numbers. I know Doug does a lot of stuff. I've like been reading some of his stuff with Fantasy Points and FF Today, and just seeing all the numbers that he puts behind it, like the spreadsheets and the projections. I had asked Jody Smith, who does projections for full time
Yeah.
fantasy, and I'd asked him about it, and I realized I would love to do it. I do not have the time to commit to it, and if I did, I would be able to, kind of dive into that stuff. But I would love to get more into that. I would just kind of grow in what I'm doing. I think I'm not perfect, but I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I think I have a lot to offer. So I would love to. I would love to write more. I like I said, I don't have the time, and I just can't. It's much easier to do an hour of video than to spend an entire week doing an article that you know gets use for about 30 minutes before kickoff when somebody's trying to figure something out.
Well, I think you're amazing. You said that you're not special when you were sending me your bio. You're more than special, Jameson.
I
I
don't know about that,
cannot,
but I appreciate
like,
it.
I don't want to. Oh, you are. Oh my God, you are. Are you seeing the comments? Are you seeing how special you are? People love you so
I
much.
appreciate it.
And I cannot say how honored I am to have you in the show tonight. Thank you so much for being part of this show, for supporting the affiliation, the sports affiliation, for supporting the game changers, for supporting everyone that who needs support. And everybody knows how a big support you are to them, and they love you for that, and they respect you for that. So thank you for being a big part of this community. I don't want to, like, honestly, I don't want to just I want to ask more questions, but I know that you are busy, and
I've got I've got
you
all the
know
time in the world as long as
yeah.
I've got a couple more minutes, but we we've got it gets late for other people, so I get it.
Yeah, but I have a question that I always ask almost at the end of the show. So
Okay.
if I want to have a secret from you, or something
Oh
that you
no.
never shared before, ever on a show, and you would like to share it tonight on the Game Changers. So, what would you like to share? Always, Mel. What would you like to share that you never like said it before? Maybe something that you did when you were a little and you never thought of it until today, and you want to share it, and nobody ever heard of it, or a secret that you never shared with anybody before, and you would like to share it with the Game Changers tonight.
I don't know if I have any secrets. That's the problem. I hate to I hate to be that person. Like for you brought it up at the very beginning, but I had a couple matches as a pro wrestler. I mean, I trained. I know that's not totally a secret, but I think most people looking at me being 5'6 3/4 wouldn't expect that from me. But I think that would be. It's not a total secret, but I think that would be um, for somebody who wouldn't know that wasn't listening earlier. I think that'd be the one that, like I said, I did that when I was uh 15. I used to go to the Evansville Coliseum every Wednesday night, and there was a guy named Sammy there. And this was before Facebook and Google and all that stuff. So you couldn't just do research on stuff. And I'd ask the guy who was working there, like, how can I get into this? And he said, give me 2 weeks, I'll come back to you. So I showed up 2 weeks, and then he said, are you doing anything Sunday? I said, no. He said, I will be meet at this gas station at 9 o'clock on Sunday, and we'll have somebody to pick you up. And I was like, okay. So, but there was like, I didn't have a text, like I couldn't text, we couldn't call. It was all word of mouth and had to trust it. So I did that, and I met with them. We drove 45 minutes to some guy's house, and he had a barn in the backyard. And it was like a rundown barn with a wrestling ring in it. And for anybody else, this place had been a dump. But for me, like they opened the doors, and it was like walking into heaven. I mean, it was something I always wanted to do. I got my ass beat for like 8 hours that day. It was awesome. But
Oh
it
my
was,
god.
and then I think it was like 2 years later, there was a training school around, and I signed up for it, and I met one of my best friends there. Um, got to travel a little bit, got to meet some of the famous guys who had come through, but had a couple matches. I don't like to go on and say like I was a big pro wrestler because I wasn't. I didn't. I had a couple matches, but just be able to do that, like what I always wanted to do. I didn't have like a dream job. I just had things I wanted to do, and that was always the big one. I think I told we were at church, like little grown up, and they'd asked all the kids what they wanted to do, and somebody wants to be a doctor, and somebody wants to be a dentist, and I go up there and I want to be a pro wrestler, and everybody laughed, and it was just like that was just part of it,
Love
and I
it.
didn't think twice of it, and I actually did it, and I don't think the other kids did, but I digress. I'm just saying. But I
Yes.
did, like I said, I did that for a little while, and I wish I would have stuck with it, but I just other stuff in life, and I always thought I'd have more time. And like I said, you quickly realize that time you can't buy it, and hard to come by. But it's I don't know if that's much of a secret, but I guess that'll count. I don't have anything else. I'm pretty boring outside of that.
You're not boring. Stop saying that. Greg is asking how much weightlifting was involved.
I was actually in pretty decent shape, so I worked out a couple days a week, and I don't now, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort. It's a lot of cardio, but it's different cardio. So
Yeah.
for like NFL players, their cardio is spurts of 3 to 5 seconds because that's what an NFL play last, and you got to do that. And for wrestling, I mean, you wrestle for 15 or 20 minutes, and you can get blown up real quick. And if you get blown up, you can't breathe, and you're trying to think about the next spot or the next move, and you can't breathe, so you're kind of freaking out, and it gets kind of ugly real quick. So it's a lot of drills, a lot of training, just a lot of that kind of sort of thing. It's different. I would argue that it's very underrated as far as people being in shape. Like people don't think how you know in shape like the pros are, and I mean they're just in shape as anybody else. So like football players and NBA, it's a grind to say the least.
You have to be dedicated a lot of time. So, Jameson, before I conclude, could you please let our audience know how they can connect with you and where to find you on social media?
I'm on the Twitter machine at Jameson Rules with a Z. It was a name that I had. There we go, right there. I made
Yes.
in like junior high after a high school band that I liked. But um, over at IDP Plus, we do the Rider Dynasty podcast with JJ Winter and Joseph Harlow every Thursday. So tomorrow night, I will do that. And then every Sunday morning, do a DFS show, go over the entire DFS slate for DraftKings and FanDuel, try to win some money. We've done okay so far this year.
That's awesome. Would that be your pro wrestling name?
Well,
JC
I
was asking
uh,
about it.
my name at the time was just my name. We didn't there were some other guys that had some weird stuff, but for me, it was just my name, which is kind of long and a mouthful. Thinking like a lot of people are real easy names, and mine is, you know, a million syllables. So, but that's good idea, not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of the Game Changers. So we hope you enjoyed our conversation with Jameson Hutchinson and gained valuable insight into his word and the word of fantasy football and wrestling. Thank you, Jameson, for sharing your experiences, life lesson, and wisdom with us. We appreciate you. Join us for the next episode of the Game Changers on Wednesday, October 9th, when I welcome Miranda Marie as my special guest. I also want to express my gratitude to Evan, Iggy, JC, and the TSA team for their continued support, for providing me with this exceptional platform, sharing with my guests authentic stories and experiences. A special acknowledgement goes to JC for his invaluable contributions behind the scenes. Your efforts are deeply appreciated. Be on the lookout because we have special thing coming up from Ronnie for the Game Changers. I'm not gonna talk a lot about it, but you heard it here before. So we're gonna start this week. Coming up this week, Ronnie is gonna be doing something special for us for the Game Changers. So be on the lookout. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more viewers like you. Follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and join our community, the Sports Affiliation, where everyone is welcome. Until next time, keep challenging the game and making your mark. This is Carla and Jameson signing off. Have a great evening, everyone.